I think I want to like start talking about like kicking off these two topics with just the talk about mental illness. Mental illness, you know, I'm kind of torn. Like I'm kind of torn. Obviously mental illness is real. Duh. I don't think anybody's disputing that, you know. But there just seems to be way more of it. And I know like one of the common pushbacks from people is, well, we're just better at diagnosing it. Yeah, probably that too. But I can just walk around and see way more weird people that I don't even know their diagnosis, and I can tell that they have some mental shit going on. You know, I don't need to be a doctor. I can just look at them and be like, you're not normal. I don't know what's going on with you, but you're not normal, you know? And I just don't remember feeling that way like when I was in my 20s, you know? Yeah, there was people that were weird and there was people that had mental illness, but it just seems to be way more like prevalent nowadays. And, you know, and I don't know what that's from exactly, but it's the undercurrent. I think it's the undercurrent for all of the shit that we're going through right now. You know, because how are you supposed to have a reasonable conversation with somebody if they're mentally ill? It's like trying to reason with a drunk person, you know? I don't know. That saying's been around for a long time. You know, you like don't argue with a drunk person. You're not going to win because it takes, when you're drunk, it takes rational thought and logic out of the equation. So how do you make points? How do you prove points to somebody when they're not going off logic? They're just going off of emotions and, I don't know, like the voices in their head. You know what I mean? Like, how do you get through to those people and try to convince them that whatever they're thinking is wrong or right or whatever, you know? But something's got to give. Something's got to give. It feels like, I was thinking about this, and I think I saw like a video on this. I don't even. I think it was like not Smokey the Bear, but it was a video about forest fires, you know, or something like that. And it was this like park ranger, and he's standing in front of like a fire pit, and there's like a bunch of kids standing around, and he's like, this, you know, it's a fire pit, but there's no fire going, and he's like, ask them, is this a fire? And they're like, no, it's a fire pit. He's like, all right. And he like lays down a twig, and he's like, is this a fire? And they're like, no, it's not. And he kind of goes through that. He keeps like laying down more and more kindling until he takes out a ferro rod, and he's like, boom, and he hits a spark, and the thing just, because, you know, obviously he had really dry tinder and kindling and all that stuff, and boom, it just like, and he was like, is that a fire? And they're like, yeah, it's a fire or whatever. And, you know, his whole point was like, all it takes is like one spark, like flicking a cigarette butt off into the dry underbrush, and then boom, you have a forest fire. My point is, all of this stuff that keeps happening, all of this stuff, these little things, when you take it by just its one thing, you're like, okay, it's not a fire yet. It's not a fire yet. But when you have so many pieces of kindling, all it takes is a spark, and boom. I am afraid that all of these things will spark something that we can't take back. We're not in a good place as a country. We're not in a good place as a country. And I think mental illness is one of the biggest issues. Now, let's talk about the train stabbing. Okay. So I am typically not one that goes out and looks for the footage. I don't like seeing that stuff. You know, it haunts me pretty much. Like, it will replay in my mind a lot. It's a very sticky thought, you know, or vision or whatever. But sometimes I feel like I have to, you know, I have to be informed about something, because you can hear about something bad happening and be like, oh yeah, that bad thing happened somewhere else, you know, but when you see it and you like watch it, it might as well have been happening like in my living room, you know, to me anyways. It changes my emotion towards it. And so anyways, basically this young lady from the Ukraine, she comes over to escape the war, has a job, doing her thing. You know, I'm not gonna say she's like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know if she's a role model or an amazing person. I have no idea. All I know is she came over here looking for something better, went through the proper channels, obviously, and couldn't even survive our public transportation. You know, she was finishing up work, I guess, going home. Sits down on the train in front of this gentleman that, you know, I'm definitely not gonna like pick on her for her like awareness, you know what I mean? Because like hindsight's always 2020, right? It's really easy to armchair quarterback what she should have done, and she should have known he was crazy and not sat in front of him, or she shouldn't have been on her phone or with her ear pods in or whatever. That's beside the point. You know, that's beside the point. Because in a perfect world, she shouldn't have to do that. She should just be able to get on the train and sit wherever the fuck she wants to sit and not get stabbed, you know? So anyway, she sits down. In my mind, this guy clearly looks deranged, but, you know, he has a hood on. And I'm not sure if people heard him muttering or what, but you could clearly see in the video, he takes out a folding knife. He unfolds it. He stands up and he stabs her in the neck, like from behind, you know? And it's graphic, you know? But it's graphic in a little bit of a weird way. Because so a lot of times when people are like in a fight, they don't even know they've been stabbed. They think they've been punched. Like the blade of the knife, you know, it's very thin. So it goes in, and then what ends up hitting you is a fist, basically, right? So wham, wham, wham. I think he does 3, if I remember correctly. And I think for a good amount of seconds, she just thinks that like some random dude stood up and like slapped her and punched her and like whatever. And she's kind of like looking around and then like covers her face and she's like kind of crying. But I do not think she realizes that she's dying, you know? and she ends up dying, surrounded by a bunch of people who don't give a shit about her. Didn't jump up to assist and help, and and so I think the last thing I heard was that the guy that stabbed her was schizophrenic. And schizophrenia is one of the most terrifying mental illnesses there is. I worked security in a hospital for a little while, and those patients were always the most scary, because they could think the craziest stuff, but in their mind, it was 100% real. It was reality. If their mind was telling them that I was a purple dinosaur, absolutely they believed it without a shadow of a doubt. Okay? So, turns out he's schizophrenic and has like a reason in his head. He's like something about implants in his brain, whatever. I don't care. He's schizophrenic, mentally ill, and he has the reasoning to stab this lady, this young girl. She was 23, I think. And I find myself losing my empathy as I get older. I'm like, I just don't care anymore that this person was mentally ill, or this person, or, that person grew up without a mommy and a daddy, and this person over here was in poverty. And, it's like, I don't care anymore. Life is hard enough for everybody. Everybody's life is hard in one way or the other. Don't make my life harder worrying about getting stabbed on a train. You know what I mean? Like, you can have empathy to a certain point. But past a certain point, it's not productive. Right? Who is moving the country forward? A schizophrenic homeless man stabbing people on a train, or somebody that's coming and going from their job to their home, working, paying taxes, inputting, and like, she was a refugee, so I don't know what her status was with paying taxes or whatever. But there was, in New York, not too long ago, there was a whole thing where the crazy homeless guy I think he was threatening to stab a lady. Guy jumps up, actually does something about it, saves this woman's life, saves who knows how many lives, and gets taken to fucking court because the guy died. Why aren't we protecting and having empathy for the people that are bettering our society? I'm not saying be mean to people that have mental illnesses. I'm not saying treat them cruel. What I am saying, though, is the two demographics of people, person A, schizophrenic homeless guy on a bus or train, and person B, lady that's just trying to commute from work, they're not the same. They're not in the same category. So stop treating them the same. We're championing the wrong people. It's not productive to our society. It's like, I have to jump through all these hoops to be a good citizen. And then there's this dude over here that stabbed somebody on a train, and everybody's like, yeah, but he had mental illness. I know. Clearly. I'm not shocked. Why is he still riding the train with her or me or this person? You know what I mean? Like, I'm paying taxes. Fix this fucking problem. And that doesn't mean it needs to be a violent fix, you know, but we've thrown money at these issues. Oh my God, we've thrown money, so much money, you know, so much money. But I know, like, if you know anything about schizophrenia, the problem is getting them to take their meds is like almost impossible. And then people are like, well, what are you going to do? Make them? Well, we used to, you know? I think it was Reagan that shut down the asylums and kicked everybody out onto the streets. You know, the asylums definitely weren't great. You know what I mean? Like, they definitely weren't great. And I don't know if that's the answer or not, but my God, you know, like, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like, after so many strikes, if they're violent strikes and you are showing a sign of mental illness and violence, bye. Get the fuck out. Because I will be going to work still. And if I have to ride the train, I want to be able to ride the train without getting stabbed in the neck. Bottom line.